Well, Bernie Sanders' wife, Jane Sanders, she actually warned us about the rigged system, and it was months ago, but it was on this show.
Donald Trump has made a big deal about how your husband is getting the shorter end of the political stick here, that given the superdelegates and the way delegates are awarded in the Democratic Party, they're not being fair with him, not being fair with you, that your husband should run as an independent. What do you think of that?
I think he has an underlying agenda there.
Yeah.
Bernie's not running as an independent. He decided early on to run as a Democrat, and he's running for the Democratic nomination. Now, Donald Trump has a point. The electoral process, the way it's conducted now in both parties, is not good. It's not democratic.
And just now, big Democratic donor Don Peebles voicing concerns, telling FBN, quote, "In light of the recent disclosure of the internal DNC conspiracy to sabotage Bernie Sanders' campaign, I will not be attending the DNC convention this week. Although I'm not a supporter of Bernie Sanders, I am a very strong supporter of fair play. There is no room in our party for rigging elections." The former senior campaign advisor to President Obama, Dan Kinanen, on the fallout. Dan, it's just looking really uglier and uglier for your party this morning.
Yeah, nice to be here, Charles. It's not a great story, obviously, going into the first day of convention, but I can't say any of it's all that shocking. These are emails from folks who are obviously part of a combative primary fight and felt strongly about their candidate that they preferred, and frankly, were just really being flippant in the office setting in a way they shouldn't have been.
But Dan, isn't the DNC, weren't they supposed to be neutral, candidate neutral in this particular case? The venom and the animosity toward Bernie Sanders shines through brightly here.
Yeah, I think the optics are really terrible for the DNC. They do look like they had an agenda and a bias there. I think the reality, though, is a couple of staff are sending emails to each other about what they prefer, what they would like to do. I mean, the CFO is not the communications director for a campaign. And I think the idea there was some thumb on the scale, sure, they had a perspective and opinion, and they preferred Hillary Clinton. That's obvious, and it's worthless debating that point. But I think it's more of a paperclip on the scale when you think of what they actually were able to accomplish. In fact, I'd argue they gave Bernie Sanders a gift. His entire campaign was running as the insurgent, the anti-establishment. That's what gave him the lift in the first place. And frankly, the actions of the DNC in ways that were real or not real just fed into that narrative and were far more helpful to his campaign than harmful in any way.
I think they feed into the narrative now. Unfortunately for Bernie Sanders, the whole thing is over, and he's going to be a good team player and more or less fall on his sword.
Yeah, he will.
What that means for his legacy among his core supporters remains to be seen, but I think it does help Donald Trump. Certainly helps his assertion that the system is rigged. It's very hard to argue against that with DNC documentation that we've gotten. And by the way, more promise to be on the way.
Well, I'll tell you, there were 3 more million votes for Hillary Clinton. She won 10 more contests. And if you had a system that looked more like the way the Republicans nominate their candidates, with winner-take-all states, without the proportional delegates the Democrats do, Hillary Clinton would have won by 3 or 4 times as many pledged delegates as she ran. The system itself actually really helped Bernie, not only the narrative, but the fact that he was able to keep, blowouts close on the electoral level.
Well, the superdelegates didn't help Bernie. The superdelegates didn't help Bernie Sanders, and certainly the attitude of the chairman of the DNC didn't help Bernie Sanders.
I think that her posture, while really unfortunate, and I got to say I disagree with her posture. I think the emails that you're talking about are pretty unprofessional, and I think there should be consequences for those folks. They didn't really hurt Bernie Sanders or help Hillary Clinton. They gave Bernie a platform by which to say this is rigged, and that elevated him for a while.
I mean, her attitude and her outbursts over the years have always been unprofessional. It's really shocking in hindsight that your party allowed her to have such a high position. And here's the thing. Apparently, she went kicking and screaming. President Obama had to call, and yet she's already spoken once today. That's the news of the day. It's destroying your party, and she's going to be there throughout the entire week. I mean, you guys can't even nudge her out the way, and she won't move out the way. A lot of people say this points to the arrogance of the establishment, the tenured establishment, and why outsiders have done so well.
Yeah, I disagree. I think what it points to is that there was less care and attention to the DNC than there should have been, and she has left. It's the right thing to do. Bernie will have a chance tonight to help unite the party and keep the message where it needs to be, which is focused on continuing the record-setting job growth we've had under President Obama and taking the fight to Donald Trump, which is a clear choice we want to step in the fall.
All right, I'm not sure what you guys promised Bernie Sanders, but he looks like he's going to be a loyal soldier. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charles. Good to be here.